You've made it to Chiro Hustle Live. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Dr. Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic boot camp, Dr. Alok Trivedi, the Black Diamond Club, Element Mattresses, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, MedZone, Vantage Point Marketing, Movable University, the Universal Tractioning System, Imaging Services, and Zingit Solutions. Let's hustle. Hey guys, Jim Chester here. I have Galen Nuttall with me. He's going to tell you a lot about himself, but before we get into this episode of Chiro Hustle Morning Edition, it's almost like afternoon edition. I'm coming to you guys from Grand Junction, which is in the Grand Valley on the western slope of Colorado, which I like to say where no one lives, and I moved here to hear the birds chirp, so thank you very much. And this episode today is brought to us by the Black Diamond Club. If you guys want to up your scale of business acumen and you want to dominate your marketplace, reach out to either Sean Dill or Lacey Book, and they'll help you set up your membership at the Black Diamond Club. And I know, Galen, you were in there for a while, right?
I was, yeah. I got introduced to Sean Dill, and just an amazing group of people in that club. Happy to help everyone who's in there. Just got amazing amounts of value out of that.
Yeah, you know, they're always putting out good content, and they really have a great tribe mentality, and they're always nurturing each other and sharing good information, which I like to call share the secret. If you know something that you can help people with that's going to make them change the course of their life, maybe by 1 degree, you're going to be able to, influence them to be a better version of themselves, make more money, have more impact on people. That's what we're all about here with Chiro Hustle. And that's really why we wanted to bring you on, Galen, and talk to you a little bit about what makes you an expert in your market. And first things first, let's just let our audience know, what is your story and how did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, for sure. So my story is, like to condense it a bit, grew up in the southern United States, moved to Venezuela when I was 21 to work in a nonprofit, educational nonprofit. Worked in education for years, got a master's in education. Then my wife and I left Venezuela. It was getting to be a little bit dangerous. We were worried about the safety of our son in particular. He was about 2 at the time. So in 2010, with a 2-year-old and 9 suitcases, we moved to Canada. And with my teaching background, I thought I'd be easy to get a job teaching, but sure enough, there were not a lot of opportunities. And a friend of mine who was an advisor said, Galen, I think you'd make a really good advisor. And initially I said, no way on earth am I doing that. I like numbers, I like people, but I just thought, it's kind of like as soon as you put the word financial in your title, people just start to question what you're all about and whether they can trust you and all of that. And so I had to get a little bit of thick skin around that. But once I learned about the impact I could have in people's lives, and once I saw, and it was myself, as many books as I read, I still didn't have a clear idea of what I needed to be doing to move forward financially. And so I thought, what better way to do that than to become an expert, like to actually do it as a living, helping others, and then at the same time learning it myself. And then when it comes to the medical professional arena, it was really just that I was meeting a lot of people who were passionate about what they do, but didn't have didn't have time or interest or good guidance around their own finances. And so I love helping passionate professionals free up that, brain space or mental space that can take up, like the worrying about finances can take up a disproportionately large amount of their mentality. And so if I can take that off of people's plates and help them feel secure in the decisions they're making, then I'm happy.
Yeah, I think that's it's a really cool story. So hablo español?
Sí, hablo español. Llevé 10 años en Venezuela.
That's awesome, man. So as we transition into more of this interview, I might ask you, because we do have a Spanish speaking group that follow us, I might ask you to respond a couple times, one in English and one in Spanish.
Sure, I can do that.
It'll make it fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So on top of this, you grew up in the South, you went to Venezuela, and you are recently back up into Belleville, Ontario. I know you're a specialist with this in the Canadian market, okay? Let's talk a little bit about how you're helping Canadian chiropractors.
Yeah, for sure. And so, one of the biggest things that I'm bringing to light is that traditional financial advice is not working very well for a lot of people, and particularly for business owners slash people who have access to a corporation. Like, the traditional financial advice was created by employees for other employees. And just as an example of that, like, a lot of the advice out there, it comes from this idea that you're going to work, you're going to work for someone else for 30, 40 years. You're at a job you don't love. Then you're going to finally get the chance to retire and actually do what you want with your life for the next 10, 15 years. And then you're going to die. Like, that's basically, like, it's not written in a book like that necessarily, but that's just kind of the undertone of like what's out there advice-wise. Now, I have to throw a lot of that out the window as soon as I sit in front of someone who is self-employed or who has a business, because, it's funny, like, so I have this planning software that I use. And one of the first things that, it asks, okay, like, let's punch in all the data to start just, crunching some numbers. And it's a support to me. Like, I don't just like blindly do what it says, but so it's like, okay, age, date of birth. And then the next question is salary, and what percentage of a raise are you going to get every year until the day you retire? And right off the bat, I have to throw it out the window, because one of the biggest questions people ask me is, how should I pay myself? How much should I pay myself? How much should I leave inside of the business? What should I do with what I'm leaving inside of the business? So it's completely different than what an employee has to think about. And the other side of it is, most, like, the vast majority of my clients, they're passionate about what they do. Like, retirement is almost like it's almost like a bad word. It's almost like a 4-letter word, because they're like, the traditional idea of retirement is, you stop doing something you didn't like doing so you can finally do what you want to do, or you stop doing stuff. And really, for most people I work with, like, that's, or I'd say just about, like, I can't think of anyone who doesn't fit, who says, well, I want to keep active. Like, I want to keep doing things. Like, so for when I use the word retirement, it's more of a, like, when someone has the freedom so that money is no longer the main, is no longer an issue. Like, can I start paying myself without working? Like, what I used to make when I was working, can I pay myself that now that I'm not working?
That's brilliant. Yeah. Now let's share that in Spanish, if we will, talking about business acumen a little bit and about why it's important to understand retirement. And before you do that, let's call Webster's up or send them a message and tell them to change the definition of retirement in the dictionary.
Well, it's funny because, so I sit in front of people and I say, like, what age would you like to slow down? What age would you like to be financially free? And a lot of people say 65, because that's the number that's just kind of floats out there. And one day I looked into it and I'm like, why is 65 the number? And I think it was Germany, like back in the 50s or 60s or something like that. They put that as the age because they calculated that half of the population would be dead by that age. And so they'd only have to pay benefits to half of the population. I'm not saying that's the main motivator, but that's the truth of the dynamic. And now that people are living longer and 65 is commonly accepted as sort of like the government retirement age, it's throwing things off balance, because it used to be average life expectancy. Like, I remember when I was a kid, life expectancy for growing up, I remember it was like 75 or something like that. Like, oh, I'm a guy, I'm probably gonna live 73, 74, something like that. Well, already my life expectancy is, like, if I look at it now, it's already like 82 or something like that. So, like, just in the time lapse of my life, my own life expectancy has increased, and that of my kids has increased. Like, so it's, anyways, that's just part of the whole dynamic of what's changed.
Yeah, I think that it's very relevant information, because so many people look at retirement as like their get out of jail card. And they're like, I've been trapped in this job for 40 years. I can't wait to go out there and do everything that they do on those pharmaceutical commercials, run through fields and go see Machu Picchu. And really, I think that, when people realize that retirement should come at a much younger age, and they should continue to do things that they really support for, their positive mental state or their physical mental state or their physical body, like transition. They should definitely think a little bit more about what retirement really means, and they should try to retire quicker. And they should try to continuously, support their local community through volunteer work. If they're, into the church scene, they should definitely tithe back. If they've graduated from a great institution, they should tithe back. So it's these things where people, I think they think that they have to earn just enough to keep the lights on and keep the food on the table and to keep the gas in the car. And I think that as dynamic as we are as individuals, I really think that we all have the flexibility to become whoever we want to, not only in our careers, but financially, just like you did.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, most of my clients when they talk about retirement, they say, I'd have more time to volunteer. I'd have more time to do these other things. Like even the few people who have said, "Oh, I want to sit around and do nothing," I say, like, you're one of the busiest people I know. Like when I talk to people, like, and I look at their lifestyle now, like people don't magically stop wanting to have an impact in the lives of other people just because they're not working in the same four walls that they were working. Like people typically want to stay as busy. I mean, my own parents, they're retired, and it's pretty funny. They both say continually, like, I'm so busy in retirement, I don't know how I ever had time to work, because they've just got so much going on with their communities and with family and everything. So it's a lot of fun to watch when that can happen successfully.
So back to the follow-up deal. Let's give our Spanish-speaking and Spanish-listening people a little bit of information on retirement and financial planning.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I haven't done a lot of my own work in Spanish, but I can do it. Entonces, en cuanto a la jubilación, la idea de jubilación no es como era antes, o la idea general era de que la gente llegaba a la edad de 65 y se jubilaba y dejaba de hacer, no hacía nada, se pasaba todo el tiempo jugando golf o cambiaba su vida por completo. Mientras la realidad es que la mayoría de la gente sigue haciendo la misma cantidad de cosas, se ocupan la misma cantidad de horas en su vida, pero a las cosas que les importa más, quizás que cuando estaban trabajando y se sentían obligados a hacer tal cosa para ganar dinero, ahora ya no tienen esa mentalidad.
Dude, I'm impressed. And I think that, it's going to have more impact on the people that are going to listen to this and share this than the people that maybe your fear of sharing that. So I appreciate you opening up a little bit and, getting out of your comfort zone and doing something that might have a benefit on people.
Yeah, no problem. It was good. I got a little choppy there a couple times, but it's funny, when I became a financial advisor, someone's like, draw upon your strengths. What are your strengths? And I'm like, or what makes you unique? And I was like, well, I speak Spanish, and up in Canada, like, there's not a huge Spanish speaking population. So they're like, maybe if you spoke French or something. But anyway, so I found other, strengths that I had that make me unique, like the fact that I used to be a teacher. And so I can use that, the idea of teaching styles and learning styles and that. So, and the tech side of things, I do a lot of meetings virtually. I have a lot of clients, like I'm licensed in Ontario and I'm licensed in BC, which is the opposite, side of the country. Very few, and I meet with my clients using all sorts of online, automated systems, which is pretty unique. So anyways, that's just a little side note about uniqueness and what I didn't consider to be a huge advantage I've been able to use.
So I want to get a little bit more personal backstory. You were in Venezuela, tropical nation, right?
Yep.
And now you've transitioned up to Canada. No tropicals, limited warm months. How have you dealt with that in the transition period?
Yeah. So the first winter was very difficult. Because so I grew up in Georgia, North Carolina. It didn't even snow every winter. I remember, I went sledding twice as a kid or something. So when we moved up here, the first time it snowed, in late November, it snowed, then it melted, and then it snowed again in December. And I was like, oh, cool. And then this is so pretty. This is awesome. I always saw movies of kids with snow in the backyard. This is so cool. And then the snow just stayed. And I was like, when is it going to melt? And they're like, March, April. And I remember I suddenly felt trapped. And I started joking about living in Narnia, but it also felt like I was stuck in this fantasy land where the ground was frozen so many months out of the year. Anyways, so I quickly decided, okay, I got to get over this. So I do triathlons in the summer, and it's a short season. I only get 3 done. But I decided I'm going to keep that up. So I would still hop on my bike. I modified my bike a little bit so I could ride in the winter on snowy trails. I'd still go out and run. I'll go all the way to minus, I don't know what it would be in Fahrenheit. Minus 20 Celsius is about my limit. After that, it's a little too cold. I think in Fahrenheit that might be 0. I'm not sure. And I learned the difference between cold and really cold. Like for me, freezing was always like, well, that's cold, but like freezing is nothing. Like after a winter here, when it gets up to freezing, people are wearing flip-flops. Like when it gets up to like 32, it's like after it's been like 5, 10, 15, it feels incredible. And so I've learned that, and I've also learned what it feels like to have like my eyelashes frozen to my eyebrows when I'm running. Anyway, so I just had to power through it, and now I just appreciate each season for its own what it brings, and take the kids skiing a little bit more than I used to.
Yeah. So how many kids?
2, 6 and 9.
How are they developing? I know you said the first one was 2, or was that the second one when you were in Venezuela?
My son was born in Venezuela. We left when he was just about 2. And then my daughter was born here in Belleville 6 years ago. So, yeah.
How do they like living in Canada?
Well, they love it. It's all they know. I mean, we have traveled to the States a bit. My mom lives in your area. She lives in Fruita, Colorado.
Oh, wow.
They love going there. All the parks and all the trails and all that. They like it. We live in a great little community. It's like a town of 50,000. It's real easy going. We're not far from Toronto or Ottawa if we need to go to a big city. So it's actually nice. I mean, especially like my wife and I, we lived in Caracas, Venezuela, which is a city of about 7 million. And so moving to Belleville, Ontario was a bit of a shock at first, but now we love it. We have a park that's like a 3-minute walk from our house. It's one of the best parks in town for them to play and learn how to ride bikes. So it's kind of this idyllic setup.
That's cool, man. It's cool to see you thriving up there above the border. And it's cool to see that you've been able to adapt yourself and your family to your new location. And you've really sunk yourself into a good career for yourself, it sounds like. I know that financial advising, financial planning might be misconstrued a little bit. Let's talk now a little bit about some tips and strategies that are like takeaways for people to say, okay, that guy is spot on. I need what he does.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start with the big picture. Like the big picture for the people I work with is like, I am a self-employed business owner, just like most of my clients. Like if people stop coming to see me, my business slows down. Like, so I'm very much on the side of knowledge, but also on the side of marketing, on the side of client intake. So the big picture for the people I'm working with is like, I think of it like there's a movie in the 80s called The Neverending Story. The 80s was chock full of amazing movies that scarred me for life, and Neverending Story was one of them. And in that movie, there's this thing called the Nothing that is like chasing people, and it's like this. It doesn't have like a physical representation. It's like this thing. It's like this beast. Anyway, so business owners, like I feel like for a lot of us, if we stop bringing in new clients, our business fails, and then we have to do all sorts of crazy things financially to survive that. And I feel like, so what I work with my clients on is how far away is the wolf or the beast? So like how many months away are you from having to do something crazy if your business like stopped or dried up? And so like a lot of people say like there's this rule of thumb, like, oh, you should have 3 to 6 months of savings so that you can weather like a storm. Well, for the self-employed business owner, like you have to get to the point where like if you want to retire at 60 and you're going to live to 90, you've got to get to the point where you're going to be paying yourself for 30 years. Like, so you're going to be watering the tree of your financial stability during your working life so that it gives you shade for the rest of your life. And the wolf is at bay. And when people are worried about that, worried about not having enough, worried about not saving enough, like it's tough for them to function at the highest level in their professional life and in their personal life. Like it's really tough. And so that's the big idea. The smaller idea is planning that a good advisor, like a lot of people out there think, oh, my advisor should beat the market. Like that's kind of like, and then you throw out like this arbitrary number. Like right now, a lot of people like, I want like just arbitrary numbers, like 6%, 12%, like whatever. And I'm like, yeah, like part of our job is to make sure that people are getting a reasonable rate of return. But if it's not getting them to where they need to be, if it's not getting them to the point that the wolf is going to be at bay when they want it to be at bay, it's not worth a whole heck of a lot. And a big part of that with along with the investing is tax savings, because business owners, like self-employed people, medical professionals, oftentimes they feel like they're treated unfairly when it comes to taxes. Like they put a lot on the line, they take a lot of risk, and they feel like the reward, like the inherent institutional reward of what they do, is very low. Like just recently in Canada, they just made some tax changes, which makes it even harder for business owners to retire. It makes it harder for them to get money out of their corporation. So like the way I think of it is someone who's like, almost everyone has an accountant. Like almost every business owner has like a corporate accountant, and corporate accountants are great. But the way I look at it is business owners in their ship, and at one end of the ship is the corporate accountant who's kind of like bailing out the water. Like, okay, these are your taxes. Like we're kind of getting them out of here so you're not taking on more water than you need. And if they've got a bad financial advisor, the financial advisor is at the other end of the ship poking holes in the back of the boat. Like, and they're not doing it intentionally, but they're not doing the things they need to do to save taxes, because a good financial advisor will save someone, I've seen it happen, where they save someone more taxes than the actual accountant does, just because of the nature of the work they do. And so when it comes to the corporate environment, the name of the game is, how can I turn my corporation into something that's going to generate an income for me for the rest of my life when I'm ready to take that leap, or supplement my income for the rest of my life when I'm ready to take my leap? And how can I get it out tax free or tax efficient? Because every percentage that someone saves in taxes, it's like getting an extra percent in investments. Like percentage saved is a percentage earned, really. So that's like the overall view.
Yeah, to me, Galen, it kind of reminds me of like what you just described, is how we have multiple, somebody that's in sick care model. They'll have multiple doctors, and they don't share across the board what medications people are taking. So you can go to one person, they'll prescribe it to you, and then you'll go to the next person that doesn't even know what else you're on, because you might not even remember. And then they'll prescribe something else to you. Before you know it, we're on a cocktail of things that no one knows, and you're just blindly shaking your head. And that's kind of what you were explaining with like having the accountant and the tax guy and then the financial advisor. When they don't know, if they're not on the same team, it can really you can give you a toxic overload of what you think is your perception of reality financially.
Oh, absolutely. And like, so a good advisor not only has a very holistic view of what's going on in the life of their client, they also have a very long-term view of what's going on for the client. So if I've got a client in their 30s, I've got like a 60+ year time horizon for that client. Like I'm thinking about, what are they doing today that 60 years ago they're going to be happy? And not only that, it's transgenerational. Like I have clients in their 60s, we're doing planning for their grandkids. Like how can they help their grandkids out such that when their grandkids are in their 70s, they're going to be grateful for the work that they did. Like for the people who are really interested in legacy, for charities and grandkids and all that. So that's a big part. So the holistic view, absolutely. Like, I will have meetings with clients where we've got the accountant on speakerphone if they can't come to town, or on call if we're not meeting in person, to be like, all right, this is what we're looking at doing, this, and this. And the thing that consistently happens is a client will come to me, they'll hear about something out there like tax efficient growth in a corporation or how to get the money out tax free. They'll come to me and they'll ask me about it, and I'll say, absolutely. And then they'll go back to their accountant and say, why didn't you tell me about this? Like, how come I'm just finding out about this? And what they don't realize is, it's not the accountant's scope. Like, your average accountant is not helping you retire or not helping you save. Like, that's just not what they do. They're saving you taxes this year and next year, but they're not usually thinking about what's going to happen 30, 40 years from now. And so the way I look at it is, most people are, okay, they've got their accountant for a long time. It's like they've gone to the same dentist for like 20 years, and they're walking around feeling like, all right, I've been going to the same dentist. He's a good guy. Like, my teeth are clean. And then they bump into someone on the street who's like, man, like.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle Live. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Dr. Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic boot camp, Dr. Alok Trivedi, the Black Diamond Club, Element Mattresses, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, MedZone, Vantage Point Marketing, Movo University, the Universal Tractioning System, Imaging Services, and Zingit Solutions. Let's hustle.
Your bottom teeth are like really messed up. Like, you should get that looked at. I'm like, what do you mean? And they go back to the dentist, and the dentist is like, oh, I was only looking at the top teeth, like not the bottom teeth. Like, you wanted me to, like, I don't do both. Like, look at my business card. I only do top level dentistry or whatever. And that's what consistently happens is people think, well, I've got my accountant, I've got my lawyer, I've got it all figured out. But unless someone has a clear path, a clear plan of how they're going to get to where they want to be, then they don't have everything that they need when it comes to having like financial peace of mind.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. And I call that tripwire information, because
Mhm.
so many times people share information with each other and they don't give them like the full story. They just tell them what their expertise, and it's like,
Yeah.
anything that we want maintenance to long term, we have to pay attention to, and we have to, like, self discovery is a huge part of that. But a lot of people, honestly, one of the things I talk about chiropractic is the reason most people don't utilize it. Number one, two, and three is they don't know where to go, and
Yeah.
they don't know how to make sense of it financially, and they don't know who to trust. So where to go, financials, and trust are major things. How do we bridge that gap into the financial realm to say, hey, you know me, you like me, you trust me, let me go to work for you?
Yeah. One of the biggest things, like on the trust side, it's definitely something I think about a lot because there's a general, like I said, as soon as you slap financial in your title, like people are like, all right, like, like there's, I mean, not everyone, but there is a certain, like, okay, what's this all about? And the media,
Where's
there's a certain level. What's that?
where's the next plane out of town?
I joke, like, I sponsored an event for medical professionals recently, and they're like, "Do you want to give a talk at the beginning? Do you not want to give a talk?" And I finally did, but I said I was hesitant to give a talk because as soon as people know that I'm a financial advisor, they might not want to make eye contact with me, like they're worried I'm going to corner them and talk to them about some, life insurance strategy or something. Um, so when it comes to, I mean, so yeah, and there's a lot of general, the media is they're putting out a lot of stuff that is making people wonder whether they can trust their financial advisor. And there's a lot of things out there that are working in that direction. Now, I mean, one of the biggest things when I have clients who are coming on, I always offer them the opportunity to talk to someone who's been my client for 4 or 5 years, who looks as much like them as I can find. And, like, okay, married, 2 small kids, medical professional, they've been working with me for a long time. You want to give them a call. And people, they'll take me up on it. And I feel like that gives them a lot of peace of mind to be like, okay, like we've been working with Galen for a long time. We're happy with what he's doing. We feel like he's really on top of, corporate changes and things like that. So I'd say that's a big one. And I mean, the other challenge, which you might be seeing as well, is like when it comes to finances, like a lot of people, they're just embarrassed to confront where they are. And they almost feel like they shouldn't be where they are. So it's almost like people are walking like, and so in my world, like I can see symptoms of bad financial planning like everywhere. And so it's kind of like seeing people walk around. I can tell just by looking at them that they're sick. But it's almost like it's a disease that they're embarrassed to talk about. Like, I don't know, like something like giardia or food poisoning. Like they're all food poisoned and they have all these terrible symptoms and they don't want to talk about it. But it's like, well, you had bad clams like at this terrible seafood restaurant. Of course you've got symptoms. Like, and I think that's one of the big things that can help people move forward is just to let all that like self-judgment about where they are just kind of go. Like everyone I talk to, like not everyone, but like it's so common to hear from people, no matter where they are financially, it's like, oh, if only I had done this when I was 20 or 30 or 14 or whatever. And I say, yeah, fair enough, true. Like if you had done X back then, today you'd be in a different spot, but you didn't. And so let's just look at what you can do now moving forward. And I've find consistently like, because people, especially professionals, like it's tough for them to admit any sort of flaw or weakness because they need to be perceived as, they feel like they need to be perceived as, some level of perfection or like, to be have everything in alignment in all areas of their life. And so it's tough for them to kind of behind closed doors be like, yeah, actually I've made some really terrible decisions and I'm not sure what to do now. And yeah.
And what that makes me spring up a feeling is talk to yourself the way you want others to talk about you.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
if you have good self-talk and good self-love and good self-motivation, and that's the way you see that you want others to speak of you when you're not around, then you have to give that love to yourself, man. And whether it's financial status, whether it's relationship status, whether it's career status, whatever it might be, you have to build yourself up stronger than anybody would ever be your biggest cheerleader. So
Yeah.
you have to look at the internal dialogue. And that's why I love the chiropractic profession so much, is because they teach people a couple things. And this is James Chestnut's work, but he did not put in the last thing, which should be the first thing. He told people to eat well, think well, and move well. But the part he was missing in that whole continuum was get adjusted. So this is why I love chiropractic so much is, number one, they get you adjusted. And then they become your trusted advisor for your health decisions. They teach you how to eat well. If you're lucky enough to build a relationship with them and you stick around long enough, they'll teach you how to move well, which is essential to having good vitality and long-term quality of life. And then they teach you how to think well. And that's back to the first statements I was talking about, was you have to talk to yourself the way that you want others to talk about you when you're not around. And if we think about these type of concepts, the eat well, think well, move well, get adjusted, now you're going to be able to expose yourself to yourself at a higher level. And you're not going to feel as, scared maybe if somebody's judging you, because you know who you are. And like you said, one of the hardest things for people to do is confront their financial status and to say, I suck at this. I'm really losing the game. Can somebody come in and quarterback me and help me get back in the game again to where I'm not going to lose anymore? And that's the thing, the hardest part. There was this old commercial, I don't know if you remember this, but it said, my uncle didn't plan to fail, he just failed to plan.
Yeah.
And that still rings true in my ears every darn day, is that people, they don't want to not plan. They just don't know how to plan.
Yeah, and it's exactly like what you're saying, is that if someone doesn't have that quarterback in their life, it's going to fall to the back burner. Like, just as an example, like I wanted to do triathlons for how many years? Like 20 years. Like I always wanted to do a triathlon. And so I'd get on the bike and I'd get in the pool and I'd run. And then one day I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh, I haven't gone for a swim in like a month, or I haven't gone on the bike in a month. And so about 4 years ago, I said, all right, I'm going to pay someone to just tell me what to do every day. So my coach, she has an app. I have an app. She punches in what I need to do every day. So beginning of the week, I look and I map it all out and I do most of it. And within 6 months of hiring her, I did my first triathlon after talking about it for 20 years. And that's because I had this person in my life whose job it was to keep me accountable to that goal. And so a lot of people will say like, well, is it too late? Is it too late? And I say, well, it's never too late to set a goal. Like, it's never too late to sit down and look at the reality. And just like you said, like the self-talk side of things, like I think like I said, I gave a talk a little while ago about to a bunch of business owners, and one of the big things I said was to let go of the regret around how you ended up where you are. And like, just like you said, like, oh, I should know more about this, or I should, like, unless you, like, I've seen people, like, so I know a medical professional buddy of mine, he's like, Galen, I spent 3 hours a day for a year learning about finances. And then eventually he got a financial advisor who just told him to do all the same things that I was telling him to do. And it's like, you could have saved, and I mean, if you wanted to learn it all, that's great. But for the people who want to have someone there to guide them, like, then they don't have to spend 3 hours a day for a year learning about this stuff.
Well, I learned this 10 years ago from a guy named Scotty Castile. And what he said is, find somebody that's good at something that you're not good at and stick with them.
Yeah. Because I see people who spent their entire careers or education getting good at providing medical care to others. And it's like, now they're going to take time away from that to learn how to do financial stuff. Like, unless it's a huge hobby of theirs that they're really loving, like, great. But even then, it's like, there's a big difference between reading the books and actually seeing what happens in real life. And we were actually talking about this before we got started. One of the biggest things I help advise people on is their behavior, because it's really easy. And the common current of information out there is like, you pick up your average magazine and it's going to tell you what are the hot investments to pick right now. Should you put your money in this kind of account or that kind of an account? And people come to me and they want like this black and white answer, like this or that. And I say, well, it depends. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And anyone who gives a very easy black and white answer to that all the time probably just isn't thinking enough to be able to say, okay, you should either do this or that, but let's figure out where you want to be and how you want to get there. Now, and it's easier to blame the markets, the investments, the accounts on what's happening. But at the end of the day, they've done studies and they've said they've shown people in similar situations, working in similar jobs, this person retires unsuccessfully and this person retires successfully. And I read this study very early on when I started as a financial advisor, and I started getting like really interested in what is it that dictates that. Well, they determined that 75% of the success boiled down to the behavior of the individual. It didn't boil down to them obsessing over which investment to pick. It didn't boil down to them obsessing over which account to put their money in. They just started taking action towards a goal and they stuck it out. And that was the biggest contributor to success. And it's hard to take that ownership. Like, it's hard. It's much easier to say, well, I put way too much money in that company that went out of business, rather than, oh, I just wasn't making smart decisions and wasn't sticking to my plan.
Well, I think that that's the reason that the chiropractic profession supports me and supports the Chiro Hustle brand and supports what we do as a team. It's because they know I'm staying the course. And they know I'm always paying attention. They know that there's not a stone that I haven't turned over. They know that I'm always hustling and I'm always out there looking. I'm looking for answers. I'm asking the engaging questions. You know, I am like the person that's out there kind of hand holding the whole profession, if you will, with the level of communication that the profession deserves. And I think a lot of the things that we talk about with Chiro Hustle are some of the things that most people wouldn't even entertain sharing at dinner about their personal lives, because they're afraid of how people will judge them on the things that they have in their toolkit.
Yeah.
So I want to throw the ball back into your court again for speaking a little Spanish to our audience. I know that we've had a couple people on here that have been really excited to see that you're able to bridge that gap a little bit. I'm not going to ask you what to say, just maybe share with them a little bit about, your experiences with seeing somebody that is not financially correct to getting them to the point to where they have a better future.
So, entonces la primera cosa para mí es establecer la meta. Si uno tiene la meta de tener, y la meta sería como, bueno, a la edad de 65, yo quiero poder dejar de trabajar tanto y poder pasar más tiempo con mi familia o más tiempo en mi comunidad. Y cuando uno ya tiene esa meta, puede reunirse con alguien como yo para decir, ese es el estilo de vida que quiero a esa edad, que cuánto dinero necesito cada año y cuánto dinero necesito ahorrado para poder pagarme a mí mismo ese dinero todos los años. Y después de eso, tener la meta de cómo llegar a tener ese monto acumulado para poder hacer eso. Y en realidad, la gran mayoría de la gente no han hecho esto. No han hecho ni el primer paso, ni el segundo, ni el tercer paso. Y son los pasos más importantes para sentir que uno tiene un camino hacia el éxito.
I notice you use your hands a lot more when you're speaking Spanish. It's a different style of communication, and I think that that's something that we can all learn from each other, is the different tone that you share with people, your behavior changes.
Yeah.
And that's
a good point. Yeah, well, it's funny because when I moved to Venezuela, I had been living in New York City. I went to the New York Film Academy, so I was making short films, and then I moved to Venezuela. And it's really fascinating because as much as I didn't realize I was doing this, I was just going about life thinking that my culture was the right culture. And so I get down there, and everyone, you don't know when the buses are going to arrive. You just kind of wait on the corner for when the bus is going to get there. Everyone's moving slower than I was. I was living in New York City. New York City, certainly when I was there, you walked fast on the sidewalk or you got out of the way. That was how you lived. You moved fast, you ate on the go, you did everything on the go. It was, and especially I was making movies. It was fast. Every minute was money. And then I moved to Venezuela, to a small town in Venezuela where I had to take a bus and then a car and then walk to get to where I wanted to go. And I was fortunate enough to just in that moment, I remember one day I was walking with some friends and I was walking at New York speed, and I was just leaving them in the dust. And my initial thought was, well, they need to keep up with me. Then I thought, wait a second, I can run out here all by myself, way ahead of everyone else, but I'm all alone. I was like, this is silly. And so I learned to slow down. I learned to, take it a little bit easier. Learned it was great living there for 10 years. Learned to talk, I'd go to get bread. I'd be we had a bakery around the corner, and I'd say, hey, sweetie, I'm heading out to get bread. I'll be back in 10 minutes. And she's like, no, you're not. You're going to bump into someone in line. You're going to get talking. You're going to get a coffee. That. It was a very interesting experience. And then when we moved up here to Toronto, I would walk down the street to see how many people would even make eye contact with me, just walking. And no one, if people made eye contact, it's almost like they got nervous. So I'm kind of glad we ended up in a small town, a little bit less. But then I also realized, if I was the one to initiate conversation or interaction, most people were pretty good about it. when I first moved here, I was like, oh, I need to stop talking to people in line because it's not what people are used to. And I was like, no, like I'll just keep doing it because it's fun. And most people are like, oh, that's, meet a lot of really great people that way. So anyways, that's my take on culture. And I think every culture has something to learn from every other culture at the end of the day.
I left Chicago and I was there for around 3 years, and I came to Colorado, which was Denver. And I'm like, everybody's so damn slow. I'm like, I was like, I just got back from Fiji recently, and there's something over there they call Fiji time. Well, when I moved to Denver, I'm like, I'm on Denver time. Like, people are slow. They show up late to meetings. Like it's just a real thing. Like, it might change now that we've had such an influx of people moving to Denver and I moved out. But yeah, when I first moved to Denver 6 years ago, I'm like, wow, these people are not in a hurry to get stuff done. And I came from Chicago where it's bam, 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 bam. You get back to work now. And I'm like, okay, I'll get back to work. I know we're coming up on the edge of our time together, but let's go rapid fire. 2 questions. Any advice you would give to a new grad, somebody that's about to finish chiropractic school?
Yeah, for sure. So I really see that there's kind of 3 phases of a practice where you've got the new grad who's like establishing themselves. And like, they've got the debt and they don't know whether they should pay off the debt or invest or put money into their practice. Like, so it's really to engage in conversations with people that can help you through that first like establishing phase. And like we talked about on the podcast, like I really feel like the marketing side of things has a lot to offer. Like when I hear about people after, 5 years after graduation, not being able to sustain their practice just because they don't have enough people coming through the door, I think it's a huge shame, like for someone who spent that much time and money getting really good at something they're passionate about and then having to close their doors, something that they could help so many people with. So I'd say that's number one. And certainly on the financial side, it doesn't take a lot of money for someone to start like a base plan that they'll be super happy with at the next stage, which for me is more of like the equilibrium stage. Like, okay, we're getting established. Now we've got like a practice that's running pretty smoothly. Now we're starting to move to like the established phase, which is having a little bit of extra money to be taking some serious steps towards our own financial well-being. And so in each of the, so I'd say that if you talk to the right people, there's things you can be doing in that stage that you'll be thankful for in the following 2 stages. And so in my world of finances, it's setting up a base plan of, okay, on the one hand, a lot of people ask me, should I save or should I pay down the debt first? And what I've seen over the years, like I might be able to crunch all the numbers in the world to say what makes logical sense. But at the end of the day, what I've seen is when people, all they do is pay down the debt, later on in life, when they're finally debt free, they're terrified of investing. They're terrified of taking risk in the market because they haven't done it. And it's later in life. So I usually look at a combination of the two, like figure out what makes sense for people and protect the income. Like, if I get hurt or sick or pass away suddenly, like what's going to happen financially to me, what's going to happen financially to the people I care about. And it's the younger you are, the earlier you do it, the easier it is to do and the most cost effective it is. So I'd say as a recent graduate, like some people say to me, oh, I'm not ready. Like I don't have enough money to talk to an advisor yet. Like find an advisor that's going to invest with you in the long term. Like I have students as clients and yeah, they don't have like a huge, practice overflowing with patients, but I believe in them and I'm going to work with them to do the things that they're going to be grateful for 10, 20, 40 years down the road.
Okay, so good answer. I appreciate you sharing with that group. Now let's talk about the exposed group, the people that are about to shut doors. Give maybe one tip that they could do right now to change their course of future to where we don't lose another chiropractor to failure.
Yeah, I'd say so. On the financial side, it would be, again, meet with some people who can help you wrap your head around what's going on with the financials of the business. And we talked about, like to not be so ashamed of what's happening and really crunch like, okay, what's how'd you get there and how to get out of it. And on the other hand, like to go back to the marketing, like in my world, the marketing side of things is hugely untapped. Like people are still doing things the way they did it 20, 30, 40 years ago. They're trying to. Like, I mean, in my world, that means cold calling. That means like just stuff that, like a little bit ago, I said, I need to be able to do this grind of stuff that people have been doing for, 40 years in my profession. And I'm like, no, anything else, like anything on the marketing side is just me being lazy, like not willing to do the work. But then I started doing a little bit of it. And I'm like, oh, this is getting me results. And I'm one of the few people out there doing it this way, like podcast interviews and Facebook Lives. And, I've got a private Facebook group for people who have gone through my first meeting and qualify for my money mindset master group, like things like that. So I'm sure in your world, like there's things people can be doing that are innovative. Black Diamond, we were talking about the sponsor, like there's ideas in there galore on how people can add value to the lives of their patients, engage with other people that are going to promote them among their circles of influence and centers of influence. Like that's actually probably, like, to be honest, it would be to join Black Diamond. Like, I know it's another plug for your sponsor, but I mean, it's amazing how much they're sharing information in there.
Yeah, I appreciate you going rapid fire with me on those last two questions. So I'm going to wrap up. I got 2 minutes left here with you. I'm going to say thank you to you for being an open conversation to share ways of strategies to help people, getting out of your comfort zone, speaking in Spanish to our Spanish speaking and listening population out there. And I just want to say thank you to Shondell and Lacey Book for being such an amazing sponsor for us with Black Diamond Club. If you guys want to up your business to the next level and have support and be able to share and openly not be judged for maybe something that's not your strong play, you can join the Black Diamond Club. It's pretty affordable, and they'll take hand holding to a new level with you with the amount of support that you get from that group. And I do want to say thank you to everybody out there that is watching. If you guys are watching this on replay, just hashtag replay in the comments there for me. If you made it this far, we really appreciate you guys sticking with us this whole time. And if you are to this point and you don't want to put hashtag replay in there, just tell me where you guys are watching from so I know a little bit about the demographics of where people are actually putting their eyes on what we're doing here with Chiro Hustle. And I'm going to close out saying, once again, thank you to Galen Nuttall. If you guys are interested in his services, he'll probably put a link in here at the bottom of the comments here. But you're just one story away. And what do I always say? Keep hustling. Thanks, Galen, and we'll catch you on the next one, okay? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Chiro Hustle Live. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.